Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today on the Wow Embossing channel. It's Laura and I have a mixed media inspired card to share with you today. We're going to be playing with our embossing powders, we're going to be playing with the Wow Changes to be specific, and I'm going to be using these gorgeous stamps from Rubber Dance. I've got Mix It Up number 5 and Vintage Stuff number 1. So these are gorgeous stamps for creating mixed media inspired projects, and so that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be using Himalayan Musk embossing powder and also Primary Pink Robin, and we're going to be using the Himalayan Musk with our Wow Changes as well. I've also got some asphalt from the Saltwater quad, and I also end up using concrete as well. But first of all, we're going to create our background. So I've got a piece of watercolour cardstock and I'm just adding some distress oxides to my glass mat. I'm using Tattered Rose, Saltwater Taffy and Bundled Sage to create my backgrounds, and I'm just using a microfiber cloth just to wipe my desk off. Of course, if you've got a non-stick mat, then you definitely get a much better smooshing technique, but I'm only looking to create a quick subtle background here. I decide I want a little bit more of the Tattered Rose on there, so I've just added a little bit more of that, and then I'm just going to dry it on the lowest setting of the Wow Heat tool, so that's setting number 1, and I'm just going to make sure that I give that a good dry both front and back, and then we'll be able to do some stamping on the top of it as well. So first of all, I like to add some tone-on-tone stamping to the background, and I'm going to be using this Mix It Up 5 stamp set. I love that stamp in the top right hand corner that's got a little bit of text and a butterfly, and just bear in mind that we're using Tattered Rose to do the stamping. It's very, very pale, and I struggle to get this to show up on camera because it's so subtle, but hopefully you'll be able to see it a little bit later on. I do zoom in so that you can see the background interest that we've created. I'm just going to use my tidy towel to wipe my stamp off, and then I'm going to go ahead and add another background stamp. This is like a ruler type stamp, and again I'm just going to use the Tattered Rose just to add a little bit of subtle stamping. And I like to work from diagonals with my first layer, and then I kind of worked in threes for the second layer, and you can just about make it out there on camera. Now I know that I'm going to use Vintage Stuff number 1 for my focal image. I'm going to use one of those lovely gorgeous florals with all that background interest on them already. But first of all, I'm just going to create a little bit of ephemera. I end up only using a little bit of this, but I just want to show you how my kind of thought process and planning was going out. So when I'm creating ephemera, I like to make it look distressed and used and worn. And so I'm just going to add some of the asphalt embossing powder over the top of the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink that I've stamped them in. I'm going to pop the excess back in the pot, and then we can go ahead and heat set it. I am going to heat set from underneath because there's lots of little bits of glitter in this embossing powder, and it really does look like hot tarmac on a sunny day. You know, where it's all glistening when you're walking on the pavement. That's really the effect that this embossing powder gives. So it's really lovely. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some colour to these images as well. So I'm just coming in with Pumice Stone and Tattered Rose. Again, I don't want to add any more colours into my colour palette at this stage. So I'm just using the paintbrush, a bit of water. I do add a bit of Saltwater Taffy because the Tattered Rose is very, very pale and watered down even more so. So I'm just going to quickly dry that off, and I'm using the lowest setting when I do that because I don't want the embossing powder to melt again. I'm then just going to fussy cut my images out using the recoil scissors from Tim Holtz, and then I'm going to go ahead and just distress the edges with my tonic scissors, just because the recoil scissors are really, really sharp. So yeah, these scissors are a little bit better for doing this. So you want to be really careful. I know you can get distressing tools. I don't have any, and I'm quite happy using my scissors, but yeah, it's you don't want to end up cutting yourself. So I'm just using some black soot distress oxide to go around the edges of those, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp my focal image. So I'm just working out which flower and text I want to use. I love these flowers. One's got music behind it, another's got some grid and numbers, and then the other one has got some text. So they're really gorgeous stamps. They take away a lot of the hard work for you. Sometimes I think it can be a struggle if you're trying to layer stamps up together, so it's really nice to have stamps that have got all that background interest already in them. So this is the Himalayan Musk embossing powder that I'm showing you there. It's got a gorgeous sheen in it. But I'm going to use the Wow Changes because I really want to make it so that it's got a texture to it. So I want the colour, but I want texture rather than all that sheen. So this is where the Wow Changes comes in. And what you get in the kit is 3 empty jars and then 3 of the Changes powders. So one adds sheen, one adds texture, and the other one adds glisten. And this is a great way of extending the embossing powders that you've already got. So you can kind of convert them. So for example, if you want a textured gold, then you can add the texture to the gold. If you want the gold to be more of a sheeny look than a shiny one, then you can add the sheen powder. So yeah, there's lots of different things that you can do with these powders, but I'm just going to experiment here using the Himalayan musk. So I've popped 2 spoons of it in using my tonic spoon. It's really important that you use metal and not plastic when you're getting your embossing powders out of the Wow jars. They've already been treated for anti-static, as have their little plastic pots. So if you put plastic in, you're just going to introduce static, and so it'd be a shame for all that hard work to be undone. So again, I'm just going to add 2 spoons of the textures changes powder, and then I can go ahead and mix the 2 powders together in the jar. And remember, any extra powder that you've made up, you can just store in that empty jar and use it up, so nothing gets wasted. So I'm going to give that a good shake, and then you'll be able to see how the 2 powders have mixed together. Obviously, there's not really much difference at the minute, other than you can see all the other bits of powder mixed in with the colour. But I'm going to go ahead and just use my anti-static powder bag first of all to make sure there's no moisture still on my cardstock from all that watery inky techniques that we've done, and I want to make sure those distress inks are dry, and then I can stamp the focal image in the Wow embossing ink. So once that's all stamped, I'm going to go ahead and add that powder that we've just mixed together to my card panel, and then we can heat set it from underneath. So again, all that extra powder can just go back in the pot and be saved for another project. And then I'm going to heat my heat tool up on the hottest setting and just heat set that from underneath. And you can see as the powder changes that it's now got more texture than sheen. So I'm just going to show you the jar. I've got a swatch on the top of my jar, and you can see that's what the embossing powder looks like normally, and then this is what it looks like now we've added that changes powder to it, and it's given it some texture. And I'm hoping the camera's picking it up, but you can definitely feel the texture. You can see that it's got more texture to it, and so it really kind of adds to that mixed media vibe that we're going for with today's card. So it takes me a while just to get my layout together, but I decide I'm going to add some stamping to some rice paper, and then we're going to heat emboss that as well. I think when I'm kind of putting a mixed media style card together, I like to add lots of bits of collage or ephemera and just kind of make it look dimensional and have lots of interest in it. And so I think rice paper just adds a really nice texture to it, and of course you can heat emboss on rice paper as well. So I've added the concrete embossing powder to the rice paper, and then I'm just heat setting that with my heat tool. I'm going to go ahead and just tear around the edge just to kind of trim it down, and I like that kind of rustic look when you're adding these kind of elements to your card. I'm then not sure whether I need to add another little focal element, so I'm going to stamp this butterfly from the Vintage Stuff stamp set. I'm going to stamp it in some Morning Mist ink, and then I'm going to add some embossing powder, and I'm going to add some primary pink robin to the tips of the wings, and then I'm going to add some more of that Himalayan musk mix that we made earlier with the changes powder, just to add a little bit of texture to the wings as well. And I'm being careful not to get the embossing powder on the body or the antennae of the butterfly, because I really want that to stay grey, and I want the embossing powders to blend nicely together. So I'm just going to heat set that from underneath. By the way, I am still stamping on a scrap of watercolour cardstock here, just because that was what I had on my desk. And so you can see there we've got that lovely powder. So again, I'm just going to fussy cut that image out using my recoil scissors. I'm sorry that this is a little bit off camera, but I do find with fussy cutting, if you move the image rather than the scissors, you get a much more easier, cleaner fussy cut image. So once that's done, I'm just playing around again with the layout, and I'm just kind of working out where I'm going to tuck everything. And then I decide, you know what, it's going to be better if I cut my panel down to size first. I think that helps. So I've cut my panel down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and I've created a very thin matte layer of black cardstock, which is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. And then I'm going to glue those 2 layers together. I'm going to just stamp a sentiment as well. I'm going to use the sentiment butterfly from the Vintage Stuff stamp set, and I'm going to white heat emboss that. So I've got the superfine Wow white embossing powder, and again I'm just going to heat set that from underneath. And this is a really smooth, good quality black card, so you get a lovely crisp heat embossed image on there. I'm just going to trim my sentiment down using my mini Tim Holtz trimmer. And then we should be good to start gluing all of those elements down that we've created today. I am going to stick this to an A2 card blank, which I've already got pre-made. This is a top folding card blank. So again, I'm just going to add some glue there and get that stuck down. And then for the focal elements, I'm going to predominantly stick them down directly to the card. So I've got a bit of black cotton thread, which I've just added a little bit of glue to. The same with the rice paper. I'm just sticking that down in the middle. I want it to have a little bit of dimension and movement on the card. Of course, you could just glue that flat if you wanted to, but then the rice paper will blend into the background, so you get a slightly different finish, but equally beautiful. I'm going to add that little bit of ephemera that we've created, and then I'm going to pop some foam tape on the back of the butterfly and a little bit of liquid glue and pop that down. And then the sentiment, again, I'm going to pop that on some foam tape as well. And just to finish off my card, I decided I'm going to add some black splatters. And so I'm just using some black acrylic paint and some water. And then I realised, oh yeah, I've already stuck it down to my card blank. I don't want black splatters getting on that white border. So I'm just adding some washi tape around the edges. I'm going to add some black splatters using my paintbrush. And then once it's dry, I'm then going to remove the washi tape from around the edge of the card. And we'll have that lovely crisp white border still. And then I shall show you some close-up images of the card. And so I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that this has given you some inspiration of ways that you can use your embossing powders. I hope that it's given you a little bit of an introduction to the Wow changes as well. So check those out if you've not heard of them before. They're a really fun way of just extending the use of your embossing powders that you've already got. I'll leave you a full product list in the description box below. And please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you've enjoyed this tutorial, and leave me a comment as well. Don't forget to check out the Wow blog, and if you're not subscribed to the Wow Embossing channel, then please consider subscribing. You can also find me on my own channel, Meerkat Makes by Owl, Cards by Laura, and I'll leave a link to that in the description box below as well. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.